Well, Merwyn, thank you for joining us today. I appreciate your willingness to be here with us.
All right, thanks for having me.
So you went to A&T, served in the Army for 8 years, and served on the school board for the last 12. Tell us about your experience with the school board.
School board experience been very rewarding. I got into this because I have a love for children. And if you ask the church that I pastor, what does a pastor love most? They'll tell you children and senior citizens.
Right.
I kind of concentrate on those. But watching the school district from the time I got in to now, how it's grown, and the proficiency with all of our schools, and at one time being a low performing school, in record time coming out of that and being to one of the top schools in the state.
Yeah, and I want to get to that part here in just a moment. First, I want to ask you about teacher recruitment and retention. Tell us about when I served in office, it was always difficult for us to recruit and retain like police officers or firefighters, and certainly because we live so close to other areas that pay a little bit more. I'm just curious about what you see as the retention efforts with the school system, what you'd like to see if you got a chance to serve another 4 years.
Well, the thing about retaining teachers is, and as you know, it's not just here, it's across the state, across the nation. Teachers are not getting what I feel they should as far as where the state raises go. I think we're really low on the state scale. But what we've done locally is we've paid local supplements. And what people don't understand is that's what we've done as a board. That comes out of local funds. That doesn't come out of the state funds. Yes, the state got a little bit of a raise this year, but what we try to do to help retain our teachers is try to give them a little bit more. So we paid our supplements where we play twice a year out of our local funding.
And a while ago, you mentioned about the schools and where they've come from. How do you feel is the public perception of schools? I mean, because now there's been a lot of talk about school choice. You've got underperforming schools. You've got schools that have improved. Give us a little sense of what you think are the public perception and how to improve that going forward.
It's hard to say what the real public perception is because there's a real push towards charter and private schools. But what I will say is that the public shouldn't always believe what they see on the news or what they hear people say. Go into the schools yourself. Look at our data. Our data speaks for itself. We have some of the top schools in the state as far as proficiency goes. So I think that, what we try to do is hire highly qualified teachers and make sure we try to retain those teachers. And those teachers are doing a phenomenal job in the classrooms. Sure, there's always room for growth.
Right.
But I think as far, especially this year, last year's data shows that we did tremendous growth.
And how much did the Children's Village Academy and their, for lack of better words, debacle, where they essentially closed their doors? I mean, there's 150 or more students. How did that impact our school system? I mean, because that seems like your funding is pretty set until after a certain number of days in the school, and then you get extra funding. How did y'all navigate that process?
Well, the thing is, when they come back to us and we open the doors and we make room and we make sure that they're properly cared for. I will tell you the thing that I don't like about it is, when each charter school, we have to send public funds out of our budget to them. But when the child comes back, the money don't come back. But we still got to make sure that child receives the best quality education that they can receive.
Right. And that is really because it's a constitutional issue in the state of North Carolina. It's one thing I think our state has done exceptionally well since its founding was making sure that free public education was part of it, no matter the kids' economic or racial status. I mean, no matter their own ability to learn,
Right.
we have to provide that education. Talk about school funding for a second. Do you feel like there is adequate funding for our public schools?
Absolutely not. We appreciate what the General Assembly does for us, and they've done a good job. Senator Perry and Representative Humphrey has done a good job with helping us navigate and getting us more funding that we need, but there's always room for a whole lot more. Now, what we did get, the ESSER funds, federal, that sunset on September 30th. But those funds, we've already encumbered those funds and in the process of liquidating all those funds by the end of the year as we are mandated to do. But we could always use more funding. I mean, we're as you know, we got the funding for a new Frank Middle School,
Right.
which was very much needed, and we're very excited about that. So if you watched the news yesterday, you saw that the $52 million grant that we received for the Frank Middle School. Then the county commissioners put in the $55 million to make it at 57. So that was great. That was something we've been working on for several years and trying to get that grant. And it was great. It was amazing just to be able to get that into yesterday, see the community response to that. So that was great, but we still have more schools that need improving. That will need to be rebuilt. We still have some more capital projects that we need to do. That takes money.
Right, because I've seen as of late, you started replacing roofs. I saw at Kinston High School just as passing by. I've seen at North Lenoir, you put in new air duct equipment in the gym there. I'm sure you've done it other places, but
Rochelle,
Rochelle. And I've seen new bleacher installations. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I know Kinston High, I believe CSS. I can't remember all of them, but when you think about the infrastructure, it's easier typically to find money to build a new building. It's much more difficult to find money to maintain. How do you balance that as a board member?
Well, it's hard to find money to build a new one. That's why it took us so long with the Frank. But we have to look at what the needs of the schools are, the greatest needs, and try to balance that. And our central office staff does a great job with doing that, because as a board member, we don't see all the needs. They get the calls on what's going on. If the HVAC has gone down, if the roof is leaking and all that. So they make the decisions on what they think need to be done first. Then they bring it to us and get our approval on it.
One thing that's I haven't seen in the news as of late, because our country has been battling natural disasters, and certainly there's a national and state election happening, but mental health and school safety has been, unfortunately, a continuous topic. In terms of the needing more public safety, what's happening there, needing to address mental health, both in an educational standpoint and as a society. Give us your thoughts from a policy perspective as a school board member on the future of being able to protect our kids in schools.
Well, the first issue you mentioned was the mental health issue. We're seeing a lot of kids now in our system with mental health issues. And, school systems, the teachers are not really equipped to handle those type of things. Sure, we have people in place, crisis management and things, but we have some local agencies that offer mental health. But to be honest, we need more because mental health is real. And especially coming out of a few years ago, that a lot of kids came back with mental health issues. So it goes back to funding and being able to get more mental health in place. As far as the safety part, you don't want to make schools look like prisons.
Right.
We have things in place to try to detect if a student is bringing in a weapon or something like that. But you really don't want a school to be like prison. We have school resource officers who are there to help protect the schools. But I think one of the things is if you see something, say something. A lot of times that's on the students can help us more because they know what's going on most of the time.
They do.
And if they see something, they say something, then we can take care of it.
Yeah.
Some people want to say bulletproof glasses on the classrooms and things. But if you look at what happens in school shootings and things, they don't come in, they don't shoot through the glass. They come into the school. And so managing that front area, in which is some of the schools that we have, put separate areas where you walk in and then before you get to the main area. Things like that is what we can do.
Because most of our campuses are pretty much wide open.
Right.
I think I grew up at Northwest, and then my kids went to Banks and Frank, and I went to Bynum and Rochelle. Of course, Bynum was my favorite school. It's no longer there, but all these campuses are really wide open. So it seemed like it would be almost impossible to build fences around all these schools. But so I would imagine that was some consideration in the new design of the Frank School as well.
Yeah, and you think about it. Before I got on school board, I was the Safe School and Dropout Prevention Coordinator for the district. And one of the things I did as a Safe School Coordinator was go to each school and kind of look at where they were as far as safety, because they are open campuses. And one thing that the administration at the schools can be doing is vigilant in which doors that are locked that can't be accessed from the outside, which would make people have to come around to the main entrance to go in, things like that.
And as we come to a close, I want to ask you about technology. I mean, I know Lenoir County Public Schools has had a one-to-one program for a long time. It seems to have gone fairly well. I'm sure there's always hiccups. I know my kids at times want to do something on paper, and but they use iPads a lot. Seems like the book bags are still just as heavy as they were when I was a kid. But you talk a little bit about the future technology in the school system, whether it's one-to-one. I mean, I'm really thinking a lot about AI too, about the future of AI in terms of public policy as it's implemented in our school system. Give us some thoughts on what you see the next 4 years of that looking like if you get to serve on the board again.
As you mentioned, we've had one-to-one technology for years. We're one of the leading districts in that. And what we've done now, each year when I go to D.C. for a conference, we go on the last day, we go on the Hill, talk to our respective congressmen and representatives there. Now, the big thing was broadband, as you know, in rural areas. And every year we go up there, we talk to them about that. So as I understand it now, we've got some funding to get the broadband into our rural areas. That's going to help a lot with the technology piece with the kids that stay out, say way out in Deep Run or way out in the Griffin area that's don't have broadband.
Right.
So hopefully that's going to help that. AI, well, it's real. We've got to work with it. That's where we are now. And I think that when we look at our youth now, one thing we have to do, and we find it in colleges that they're doing now, is even now with our kids is monitoring their papers and making sure the AI is not writing the papers.
Right.
AI is going to be great, but it's like technology is like anything. If you use it properly, it's really good. But if you don't, then it can be a hindrance. So hopefully with the AI, we've got these partnerships with Crown, where our kids go out there, and I'm sure they're using the technology there. And that's one great thing that I want to say is our partnership with Crown is great because those kids can go out there, get an apprenticeship, and afterwards be hired.
Right.
And make probably more money than I make
right.
with a degree.
Yeah.
They're paying them really well. So, and you figure the kid is 18 coming out of school and making, over $60,000 a year as a kid, so. But yeah, the technology is awesome. And in the next few years, the next 4 years or so, I just think it's going to be that much more positive because that's the way the world is going. And if we can get them into that while they're young, and then if they decide to go to college, then they'll already be ahead of the game. And even if they go into the workplace, they'll be ahead of the game.
Well, as you come to a close, what could you say to the voters? I mean, this is going to be a national gubernatorial election. So we already know 75, 76, 78% of the registered voters will actually vote. I mean, what can you say to them as a closing argument of why they should re-elect Merwyn K. Smith to the school board?
Well, I'm going to read off to you what's on my cards.
Okay.
One of the big things was the $52 million grant that we did. People look at that. They look at the school board. What they normally see is Monday night, and they think that's all the school board is. There's a whole lot more than that. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes things that has to happen with the school board that people don't see. When you look at the grant that was written and we were received, once you receive the grant, then you got to let your contractors come in and do their pitch to you. And then you got to let the architects come in and do their pitch. And all that, then you got to decide which one you think is the best fit. And then there's more nuts and bolts to go along with that. So it's not just Monday night, we're on a school board meeting and we're talking about things, but there's a whole lot that goes on behind the scenes. So I'm really proud of that. We've worked on that for years. Another thing is with our district, we're one of the 2 leading school districts in the Southeast region for digital learning, as you just talked about, the technology. We've been ahead of that game for a good while now. And also, the graduation rate is as high as it's been, and the dropout rate is at its lowest.
Wow.
That's outstanding.
Right.
And that comes because what we try to do is hire the right people and put the right people in place to make that happen. Now, another thing that I'm really proud of that I championed when I first got on the board, when we had the superintendent at the time, was the free breakfast for all kids.
And that continues to this day, right?
Continues to this day, and to have free lunch.
Right.
I think that both kind of trickled down to the lunch. But my thing with the breakfast was I know there was surrounding county that had free breakfast. And I asked the superintendent, well, why can't we, get on board with that? It's the FDA thing. And so I kind of championed that. He got on board with it, and now they have free lunch, free breakfast, and free lunch. My point is a kid can't learn if they're hungry.
Right.
So we got to make sure that we feed them. And for some of them, that's the only meals they might get that day. Right. You just never know. But really, when you talked about technology, 23, 24, we were the only district in our region to receive the NCDPI coding grants. Mm-hmm. Our kids are really involved in technology. All those things, the board that we support, I want to be able to stay on the board and to see a lot of these things through to the finish that we've started, because there was a lot of hard work that went into that thing. Mm-hmm. And I can tell them this, that as your board member at large, I will continue to fight for all students, not just some students. Mm-hmm. Some people say, well, what about my kid? I can't do what's best for just your kid. Mm-hmm. I've got to do what's best for all kids in Lenoir County Public Schools. Right. And I've got to do what's best for the staff in Lenoir County Public Schools. And another thing is, I've heard them talk about parental involvement. Our parents always have involvement. They're always welcome. If they have issues or concerns, they can come to the board meeting, sign up for public comment, and tell us about their issues and concerns. They can always email me, and we'll talk about it that way. Give me a number, and I'll give you a call. But the parental involvement piece has always been there. It's just a matter of the parents coming to us and letting us know. We can't do anything about what we don't know about. And so I just want the parents out there to know that our doors are always open. My email is always open. Mm-hmm. Just let me know what's going on, and we'll walk.
And in this race, there are 2 seats in the at-large seats up for grabs and 4 candidates. Mm-hmm. Election happens from October 17th, the early voting, up until I believe the 2nd or 3rd, that Saturday at 3 p.m. And then Tuesday, November 5th is election day. Polls close at 7:30 that evening, and Neuse, of course, will be live at 7:15. Going through all the races and what to expect to happen that night, and wish you the best. Thank you for. Okay.
And one other thing I want to say is the ballot this year is long. Mm-hmm. It's about 2 pages if you look at it.
Right.
But the school board is at the end of the ballot. So I want to encourage people to do is look at your ballots. Right. Don't forget the school board. Right. But I need you to turn the ballot over. Go down to the school board and circle in Merwyn K. Smith. Right. And then you can flip it back over.
He said, "Don't get ballot fatigue."
That's right. Don't get ballot fatigue.
Listen, appreciate your service to our country,
yes, sir.
And I appreciate your service to our school system, our county at large, and I wish you the best in this election.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you having me.
Thank you, Merwyn. Appreciate it.
Thank you.